And joining me now, House of Delegates member Virginia Beach, won a great re-election campaign, even though he got outspent 5-1, did not run a single TV ad, got outspent $1 million to $220,000. Glenn Davis. Hey, Delegate Davis, great to have you.
Good morning, John. Great to be back on the show.
Now, tell us about your new leadership team. I'm not a fan of it, but I want to get your perspective. Mine doesn't matter because I'm not there.
Well, look, I have tremendous respect for Todd Gilbert. I've worked with Todd my 6 years there. He obviously was the delegate that kind of uncovered the Kathy Train bill and did an amazing job walking that down the path in committee to flesh out what that bill truly does. Jay Leftwich was elected the same year I was. We're classmates coming in, and I know Kathy pretty well. So. They're good people, the goal this year is going to be hopefully one of telling people what we're about, not just what we don't like. We've had a number of years now where I think it's been who's had bigger horns in their head. The voters don't respond to that. They're looking for what are you for, not just what are you against. It's something that we used to be about back in the 90s. And I think hopefully we'll see a little bit more of that transition coming as we move forward.
So what are you for, Glenn?
Well, John, I mean, Republicans are always about the details. It's about solving solutions. It's about actually bringing down the cost of health care. It's about actually creating better education opportunities for our children in school. It's about ensuring that when little Johnny comes back from college that there's a job for him to have here. It's those types of things, not just at the 30,000-foot view, but actually, on the ground. We can talk about, good policies, good legislation that we've done that actually impacts people that if they knew about, would talk about around the kitchen table. That's what we've got to get back to. When we first took that majority back in the 90s, John, it was on the backside of George Allen working in a bipartisan manner, helping to bring about welfare reform, helping to bring about truth in sentencing and the abolition of parole. Things that meant something to people around the kitchen table. We got to get back to that.
Well, let's just take a couple topics here, because when you say you want to be for something, I mean, here's the real issue. The Democrats are going to hit the ground running with a number of bills that I think are likely out of step with the majority of Virginians, even though they did get elected in those districts. For instance, one of your colleagues in Northern Virginia said that we're going to have the most breathtaking 72 hours in the history of the General Assembly, right? So that was one of your...
It's kind of a gut punch. I mean, it definitely takes my breath away. If you want to punch me in the gut that hard, that quick, yeah, I kind of agree with them.
So Alfonso Lopez said, 72 hours, we're going to change Virginia forever. So when you say there's things you want to be for, here's reality. The first thing you're going to have to do is marshal a defense against that. And I guess I don't know what the legislation is. I know the first thing is going to be get rid of right to work. Second thing is going to be third-term termination of pregnancies coming out of the birth canal, put them on the table. Whatever it is that Governor Northam said, that's going to be number two. Number three is going to be sweeping gun-restrictive legislation. So when you say, Delegate Davis, you want to be for things, isn't that really a dichotomy? Because coming right out of the chute, if you believe Alfonso Lopez, you're going to be in the position where you have to fight some of the things that they want to do, right?
Well, I mean, John, don't get me wrong. We're going to have to fight to help stop things that would really turn Virginia on its head. But when it comes to messaging, it can't just be about what we're against. Look, we just spent the last 8 months trying to scare the bejesus out of Virginians on those three issues, and we got our rear end kicked. Virginians don't respond just to what you're against. They have to know what you're for, how you're going to make things better. And that's one thing I think we're finally learning that message. It's, we can't just run on the fear-mongering aspect. We tried it. Those three issues are big issues that really will turn Virginia on its head. It'll make Virginians' lives worse, and we lost running on that. It's not that Virginians want this to happen. It's just you also have to give them what the alternative is at the same time. What are you for? I'll go back to the Medicaid expansion back in the day. We can't just say, no, this is a bad bill. We better have something to say, but here's how we can solve the problem. It's that second half that I think we've started to miss over time, at least when it's come to messaging with the voters. And that's what I'm looking forward to kind of having put back in the spectrum.
So who's going to be in charge of that messaging, Glenn?
Us as a caucus. One thing that I think all of us was in caucus appreciated was a lot of the comments made by Todd Gilbert, the new minority leader, and he said it perfectly. The messaging, a lot of the things that are done by caucus that maybe have not been fully inclusive of the whole caucus needs to start being that way. And he's bringing everyone together for a couple of pieces, and the messaging is one of them. We have people that represent very diverse communities, very diverse constituents. I happen to, handle mostly an urban area, and of course, we have people out in Southwest Virginia very different. So we have to make sure we get the messaging right for both sets, and also make sure that the messaging is not in a manner where you're having some of your colleagues with one set of messaging that is negatively impacting, or unintentionally impacting another Republican colleague in a different part of the state. You can't have conflicting messages by geography.
So how can you merge them together, Glenn Davis?
By talking about why certain policies are maybe good for one area, and if you have a difference in opinion between colleagues, you also relate that to a difference in those that the colleagues represent. The needs in Southwest Virginia, in some cases, are different than the needs of those living in Virginia Beach. Good people can disagree, and it's inside your own caucus. Michael Weber's a very good friend of mine. We sit almost right next to each other. Him and I can disagree, but he represents a much different part of the state than I do. Same with me and Will Moorfield. And so when we disagree, it's not so much on party principle as sometimes it gets made out to be. So it's more so on the difference of those we represent and those who are elected to represent. That message gets lost. And I think that needs to be more the messaging, so we don't have this unintended consequences of friendly fire is probably the best way to put it.
We're with Glenn Davis, House of Delegates member, Virginia Beach, surviving a very stiff challenge from his opponent, who outspent him 5-1 over $1 million to $220,000. She went on TV early, had a big schedule. Glenn spent $0 on TV and was able to win, I would say, somewhat comfortably. It was a tough race, but Glenn, that's really a model. A lot of people thought you were going to lose that seat. You battled back to win it. That's why I thought you really should be in some kind of a leadership role, because the people that like Kathy Byron or Jay Leftwich, they had no opposition. Todd Gilbert got a bajillion votes in the Shenandoah Valley. I was disappointed that somebody was not on the leadership team that actually won a contested race. That's, I just don't think you have, if you're Jay Leftwich and you have no opposition for 3 terms, I just don't see how you have the perspective of somebody who's in a swing district who has to get reelected every 24 months while being outspent by tons of out-of-state money. But look, that's just me. I can sit on the sidelines and say what I say, but I thought it was unfortunate that somebody in a competitive district was not on that leadership team. John Fredericks Radio Network. I got to go to a quick word from our sponsors. When I get back with Glenn Davis, we're going to talk a little about his future, because I thought he was one of the huge winners a week ago Tuesday in a sea of debacle. Glenn Davis was a shining star. I'll be right back. All right, we're back with Glenn Davis. Glenn Davis, Republican House of Delegates member from Virginia Beach, ran a super race on this cycle, getting outspent 5-1 and winning in a suburban urban area of Virginia Beach. Glenn, let's go to your future. I mean, this was a stunning victory you had, especially when you look at how you got outspent. Part of the reason you did this is because you connect with your constituents. You're in touch with them all the time. You door knock all the time. You're out there all the time. And so people know who you are. That's how you were able to beat back that challenge and win. You also, even as the incumbent, offered to debate your Democratic opponent anywhere at any time. She neglected to do that. She paid the price and got beat. What's Glenn Davis' future?
John, that's a great question, and Shelley's within earshot, so I have to be careful on that one. No, John, I don't know. I love solving. Yeah, Shelley's walking up wanting to know the answer to that question too. I don't know. I love solving problems, John. I'd love to help continue to move Virginia forward. I unfortunately think we're going to take a few steps backwards here this coming year. I'd love to continue working to bring civility back to politics. I appreciate the kind words on the intro coming back into this segment. But to tell you the truth, John, I think a lot of it that resonated really wasn't just so much, me and the effort, but just the concept of being straight with the voters. Not going out there running a whole bunch of negative TV ads and not, going and saying, you re-elect me because the horns on my opponent's head are bigger than mine. I think that's why we won, and I think Virginia and politics would be a better place if that was the way campaigns were done. I think that is how we start winning again and bring civility back to politics. And then as far as the Republican Party goes, I love for us to get back to the party of Reagan, where we were about solutions and big ideas and helping innovation. Whatever I can do to get it there, I am happy to do. I don't know what that is.
Would you consider running for Congress in 2020 in the 2nd District?
Oh, not a chance. John, I appreciate the thought. I've been asked a couple of times now in years past and again this year if I would consider doing it. John, if you know me, I'm an entrepreneur. One of 11 on city council, I got used to, and I could help get things done. One of 100 took a little bit of getting used to. One of 435, I'll jump out of a window. So I love to serve up there. It would be a tremendous honor, but I know I'd be frustrated as heck, and it's just not the place for me.
All right, let me ask a quick question here from Scott in Chesapeake, I think, or Chester. I'm sorry, Scott in Hampton. I got mixed up. Scott in Hampton says, would you ask Glenn Davis if Republicans are going to run candidates in all races in 2021 rather than concede 20 to 30 races by not running any and letting Democrats focus their resources on their competitive races? Not a bad question.
It is a great question. It really is. John, here's the catch, and I always feel bad for some candidates. We never tell a candidate you can't run, right? But I would feel bad as a party, as a caucus, going in and finding a candidate, asking them to do it, knowing that it's a race we're going to be almost impossible to win, knowing that because it may be so lopsided in the polls, we're not going to give them any financial support because we really can't even keep up on a 2-to-1 basis with the Dems and most others. And knowing the time and effort and energy it takes from the candidate and the candidate's family for 8 months to run. So I hesitate to say we're going to run someone in all the races because I think it's unfair to go and find that person, ask them to run, and promise them stuff and not deliver. But we will definitely be in all the races that are competitive. But John will also say, I don't think we have to spend the same number. You don't want to race by who spent more dollars. My race proves that this year. We've had other races in the past that have proved that. Hell, the Democrats proved that 2 years ago when they took back 15 seats. For some reason, we think parity is all about dollars spent, about, if you want to know who's going to win, look at the dollars spent. That's not the case. So for some reason, that's how we're judging whether or not we're keeping up, as opposed to are we keeping up by vote count or by messaging, attraction. We could do a hell of a lot more with less if we just got the messaging right.
John Fredericks Radio Network. Want to thank Glenn Davis for his candor and always being with us. Hey, Glenn, thanks. Always great to get your perspective.